Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Passion Project, a weekly podcast brought to you by the WHS Tech Group. I'm one of your hosts, Derek Diuco, and I'm joined by...
Guru, hi.
This is a weekly podcast where we bring in a guest so they can talk about a particular topic they're very passionate about. It can be literally anything. Chapstick, voting, pet rock collecting, oil paintings of Tom Hanks. This week, our guest is Kate.
Hi.
All right, Kate, and what are you here to talk about with us?
I'm here to talk about marine science.
Nice. And how long have you been interested in marine science?
I've only been interested as something that, I know that it has a name, marine science, since freshman year, but I've been interested in looking at things that live in the ocean and rivers and picking up rocks and looking under them and tide pools since as long as I can remember.
Nice. And is there maybe any, someone who's, fostered your passion, maybe a particular teacher at the high school or, any other, very famous scientist or something?
Well, for the longest time I've been going to the beach with my family, so definitely that's been a large help to foster my curiosity. At WHS, Mr. Marchand teaches the marine science class, and he was very accommodating when I wanted to know every other thing about, feeding the fish. They eat krill, all these little shrimpy things that we're trying to grow, and allowing me to feed the anemone, which is super exciting because you can look at the anemone, grab its food. No one else thinks it's exciting, but I think it's very exciting. I went to a semester school that focused on marine science, and that was probably one of the biggest impacts in really helping me grow that passion. So Dr. Carrie Whitaker was there, and she was the teacher for that. And over the summer, I've had jobs working in the field, so definitely working with Laura Lubelczyk and Nicole Poulton. They have been hugely helpful and inspiring.
And where is this semester school?
The semester school is Coastal Studies for Girls in Freeport, Maine, on Wolf's Neck.
Okay, nice. And what are your thoughts on how how marine biology sort of taught in the schools, and did that do any help in sort of increasing your curiosity, or was it just a fun class or something?
It definitely helped. It was giving a lot of important background because marine science, we take biology, we take environmental science, we take bioengineering, biotechnology. We have all these different outlets for biology, but we don't have as many outlets for marine biology. And considering that such a large percentage of our world is ocean, all the life evolved from the oceans, and there's so much biodiversity in the oceans, and the different dynamics in the oceans are so interesting. It's honestly very surprising to me that we don't have more ocean sciences as regular classes, and that's not as focused on in biology and other classes like that. So definitely it was a very interesting class. It was also going a lot of background information such as tides and prevailing currents that really are the backbone of the science. It's the ABCs basically. So it was definitely very informative and useful to have that background knowledge.
Okay, and why do you think it is that so many people are kind of unaware or not interested in marine science, even though as you said, so much of our planet is basically just marine science, water?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we live on land, so we don't see a lot of marine stuff going on, and even though the oxygen from every other breath we take is provided to us by phytoplankton, we don't see all the ecosystem services it gives to us. We don't understand that it absorbs over a third of the CO2 released into the atmosphere. We don't get all the things that it does for us because it's just not visible. And even when we do go to look at the ocean, most people just look and see this flat expanse of nothingness, when really it's an incredibly microbiologically diverse community with from megafauna to microfauna. It's so diverse and so interesting. Even in the deserts of the ocean, in the pelagic zone, the aphotic pelagic zone, you've still got things like the vampire squid from hell, Vampire Toothus infernalis, which is this fascinating squid that floats along on currents and eats marine snow, which is essentially detritus, but it's very large, red, and it incubates its babies for 2 years. It's amazing. So I think it's not visible to us, so out of sight, out of mind.
Is marine science something you were sort of looking into as sort of a career also, or?
At present, yes. I'm in the process of looking for colleges, and it's hard to find a college that has marine biology is a large part of the curriculum, and if I really want that, it's going to be 1 or 2, but I've talked to other scientists, and they say that as long as in college you get a background in biology or chemistry, then you can be fine going into the future, but I'm definitely looking at marine science or something involving marine science as a career path.
And is there any sort of divisions, specific divisions you could like tell us about in terms of just like, because I think like if someone just says like marine science, the people who don't know as much are just gonna think like, oh, they study like animals under the ocean, but I'm sure there's so many other like intricate divisions in sort of that career.
Yeah, because it's not as well known, marine biology laboratories will be focused on certain things. The laboratory I've worked in focuses on marine microbiology, so phytoplankton, bacteria, viruses. They're the real powerhouse. They actually have, in the micro area, you have such a variety of sizes, of species, of genuses, and all that stuff going on. So it's plenty ecosystem to look at and just a liter of water. So I'm very interested in that area. The areas that people hear about are charismatic megafauna, which I've heard a lot of different scientists gripe about how all the funding goes to charismatic megafauna such as whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions, sharks. Those sharks are a different story, but they definitely need protection because they are essential to the ecosystems, like giving back nutrients to the phytoplanktonic ecosystems. So there's the study of those organisms. There's also like ocean geochemistry, which is what gets a lot of money from like oil people looking to invest in the plate tectonics, because a lot of that is under the ocean. That has a lot of impact. There's definitely a lot of fisheries biology because it's such a big deal, like fish. And don't get me started on overfishing because, God, it's such
Oh no, go right
a problem.
ahead.
Okay, the populations of fish off our east coast are like 1% of what they should be, of what they used to be, because of trawling, because of like this vacuum fishing type of thing, because of just huge netting of fish. They basically just drag it along the bottom and pick up literally everything. Like, yes, the endangered coral species, they're picking up those. They're getting enormous schools of menhaden, and immediately that entire community is wiped out because fish travel in schools, and if you pick up the entire school, you're just wiping an entire community off the map because things aren't as stationary as they are on land. They're more dynamic. And that's led to huge decreases in population, which is making like codfish are so much less abundant, menhaden, all these different type of fish, tuna especially, although with them it's less of a schooling issue, but I don't know as much about that. But the thing is, it's a difficult issue to solve because you just can't say, all right, no more fish, we're not going to do it, because the way fishing is, it's a lifestyle for a lot of people. So you can't just say no more fishing because you're picking on people, like, you're not picking on rich people, you're picking on people in the lower income brackets who've been fishing in their families for ages and they literally have nowhere else to turn. So you've got to be very careful about moving to sustainable fishing practices, but also doing it in a drastic enough way that you can save the fish. So it's a very complex issue, but it's just not getting the attention it deserves.
And are there like any other sort of things that you would suggest or like you would want more attention directed towards like environmentally that we could like sort of improve upon that relates to like marine science?
Two major focuses, I think. One, ocean acidification. You may have heard of it. I know a lot of people have. In my circles, I assume that everybody knows about it because it's the other side of climate change. It's the absorption of CO2 into ocean causing rising pH, which basically makes it so much more difficult for organisms like corals and phytoplankton and fish and anybody that lives there to survive. But I've been surprised by how many people don't even know that this is happening. They don't know that the ocean is absorbing CO2 and that that's being incredibly damaging. And it's really looking bad for coral reefs, guys. Like, they're not going to last very long. And the other issue would be dead zones and overuse of nitrogen fertilizers that lead to, I've heard the word eutrophication used. I'm not certain if that's the correct term, but the idea is like if you fertilize too much and it runs off into the rivers and into the ocean, it can lead to a fast bloom of phytoplankton and then a fast die-off and then aerobic decomposition, which removes all the oxygen from the water, and it just stays that way. So this has led to fish kills, and it basically makes areas uninhabitable for life. And an instance of this is the entire Gulf of Mexico, basically. So there's nothing really that can live in the waters off of Louisiana because there's no oxygen left, and that's because of the vast amount of fertilizer just coming down through the Mississippi River. So maybe you're a farmer in Nebraska and you're like, whatever, I'm going to fertilize. I'm nowhere near the ocean. You're near enough in the watershed. So people need to understand the watersheds. And even in Winchester, people are like, I'm just not going to pick up my dog poop because it's gross. But that also contains a high concentration of nitrogen, and if it ends up in the Aberjona, it'll go to the Mystic, and then it'll end up in Boston Harbor. And if we are part of the Gulf of Maine, like everywhere enclosed from Cape Cod to Nova Scotia is the Gulf of Maine, and it's an incredibly diverse, rich marine habitat, and we really don't want to see that become a dead zone as well.
And maybe for people who may not know exactly what that is, can you describe what a dead zone is specifically?
So a dead zone is one of these areas where phytoplankton have bloomed at an incredibly high rate and then all at once been digested and decomposed by aerobic bacteria that used all the oxygen in the water, all the dissolved oxygen. And then that leaves no dissolved oxygen in the water, making it impossible for anything that needs oxygen, fish, phytoplankton, not phytoplankton necessarily, but aerobic bacteria. Nothing can live there, and that starts a vicious cycle. Like there's nothing left there. Maybe there's some inorganic nitrogen, but there's nothing left that can live there.
I know you talked earlier about how the reason a lot of people don't know or don't care about marine biology is because they can't see it and they don't realize how much it affects them. Can you talk more about how, even though we think we're so far removed from it, how processes that go on in the ocean can affect us even when we live on land? Sure.
So definitely climate change is talking to us right now through storms. Mostly we're all hearing about the extreme weather changes. And a surprising amount of weather is dictated by ocean currents. So, for instance, Hurricane Sandy was powered by warm water moving up the coast. It also, a cooler ocean will make for cooler coasts. And because water has a higher specific heat than air, the areas around the coast will be warmer into winter because the water maintains the summer heat for longer, and vice versa in spring. Coastal areas will be colder because it's maintaining heat from the winter. But as we get warmer, it's going to help feed a positive feedback loop, keeping coastal areas warmer. Additionally, like I said before, over 50% of the oxygen we breathe is provided by phytoplankton, which are tiny photosynthetic microalgae in the ocean, and cyanobacteria as well that photosynthesize. And they provide the base of the marine food chain and all sorts of really interesting stuff. There are huge books that just categorize every single species that might be present in one specific location on Earth. They're extremely abundant and extremely diverse. We're also connected to them in that our water, which we get from a reservoir, once it goes down the storm drain and down the Aberjona, down the Mystic, and into Boston Harbor, that it's going straight to the ocean. So that's our storm drains. Our water is treated at Deer Island, thank goodness. But whatever goes down our storm drains ends up in the ocean. This is plastic, chemicals, whatever. So that's impacting the delicate chemistry. Because as you can imagine, you're living in all this. It's suspended. It's a three-dimensional environment. We live in a pretty two-dimensional environment where there's the surface and then whatever is sticking up from that. But in the ocean, everything is media for life. So you can have habitat all through the column. And being surrounded by chemicals can be pretty bad because it's not like it's just going to settle out. There's a ton of mixing going on.
I think for people listening, just pause this video and take a moment of silence for the Aberjona River, because really we have kind of destroyed that.
I mean, earlier today I had a friend who threw a plastic cup into the Aberjona.
Yeah, the Aberjona is recovering. It's not as bad as it was. So part of the issue is we can't dredge to clean it up because a lot of the toxins that come from older factories in the leather industry have settled to the bottom and are sort of inert. But honestly, the Aberjona isn't as much of a hopeless case it's honestly if we can get a lot of pollution out, that would be great, but we're opening it up to a fish ladder, which will allow for more fish to come through. You might have seen herons. It's making a comeback. So don't throw cups in the Aberjona. That's dumb. There's a trash can for that. You can recycle it. Don't throw things in the Aberjona. It deserves better. Like the other day, I saw 4 catfish in the Aberjona. Things live there. Just because they're not humans doesn't mean they don't matter. But yeah, it's not that much of a hopeless case. It connects. It's actually, so I work with the Mystic River Watershed Association in their herring monitoring program in the spring to look at fish that were threatened by overfishing and are now protected. The river herring, Alosa pseudoharangus, and there's another species, but they essentially look the same. And we're getting a fish ladder built this November to allow them to come further up through the mill pond in town up to Wedge Pond near the high school and further up Horn Pond Brook to perhaps Horn Pond. But you would need another fish ladder up there unless you're a really skilled fish. But yeah, so there's hope for these ecosystems, and the EPA has rated the Aberjona not the worst in our area, not the best. It's like if you've got green, yellow, and red, it's in the yellow-orange area. So it's not terrible, but it needs work.
So obviously, as you have talked about, the things we do on land that we think don't affect the ocean do. If right now all of the things we do, all of the pollution that, we contribute to the ocean, all that stuff, if we cut all of it off right now, what would the process of the ocean, like ecosystems repairing themselves, look like? Like, how would that happen? How long would it take? Would it even happen at this point?
It would happen, definitely. Ecosystems are incredibly resilient. I don't know all the details. I don't think anyone does. I haven't read every single paper out there. But I definitely think for dead zones, ocean mixing could eventually help bring back some dissolved oxygen, and some plankton could move back in, but currently it's just onslaught after onslaught. I'm not sure how long it takes for those areas to recover, if they can recover. In terms of ocean acidification, if we stopped all carbon pollution, it wouldn't be enough because we still have over a threshold limit of carbon in our atmosphere. Like, a lot of things have changed simply because of what we've done already. So we would have to not only just stop our input of pollution altogether, but we would also have to look at what's already there, look at the suspended trash and garbage areas, like, oh my god, the garbage patches, which are increasingly well known, which is great, but people still throw cups in the Aberjona. But like, the microplastic suspension could be dealt with eventually. Hopefully some of it would sink or wash up, but honestly, I don't know. Plastic lasts for thousands of years. We haven't had thousands of years since plastic's inception to really study its effects. I've got to believe, just because of the way ecosystems work, that recovery is possible, but I don't know. I don't think it could ever look the same.
I will say, to go off the point of just like picking up trash, it was always astonishing to me when, this is a throwback to an environmental club was a thing at our high school, and they would have these basically almost every meeting was just like a trash pickup, and I did go to some of them, and like it was astonishing just how much, back at our old high school area, like how much trash there was just around. Also the abundance of Pepsi cups, because it was just astounding to me. And I think it's literally just like, honestly, the school needs to either have an assembly for recycling, which I think is should be a very simple thing, or set up more trash cans somewhere, because it's just it was just disgusting.
Believe me, I hate you. I pick up trash all the time. Sometimes I have to make a conscious effort not to, because if you're going around with like 18 different pieces of trash in your hand, you look a little crazy, and this is not the best impression you're trying to make if you're trying to get a job or something. So I don't know, I get sort of aggressive about it, I suppose. I try not to. I'm picking up litter. What's your problem? In terms of recycling, I definitely think there needs to be a lot more education surrounding that, and just making it cool, because especially for our year, You may remember Green Team in the middle school. And
I loved Green Team. But
I remember
you
getting
just-
laughed off the McCall cafeteria stage. I was humiliated. Miss Sundrum would send people to Green Team as a punishment, and they would never even work. It was frustrating, but
It was great. We just went out to
Yeah.
the recycling dumpster in the back,
I
and
know.
we got to climb in it, and it
Yeah.
was clean because it was recycling. And
oh
not
god,
trash.
you don't even know. But so yeah, now the Green Team at the middle school, thank God, is really a lot better, and they are doing cool, more interesting things because the custodial staff has kind of thought like, oh man, recycling is actually our job. Wow. Not to rat on the custodial staff. I think they're great. They do an excellent job. It's just that at that point it wasn't included in their job description. So props to whatever administration it was that said that, like, yeah, recycling is a thing that you should do. But definitely it takes a lot of work to try to educate people to put the right recycling in the right place, because it's not a simple thing. Because apparently banana peels just look recyclable. I don't know. Like
Aren't they like not compostable too? Or something?
banana peels are compostable. They just take a while.
Okay.
Corn cobs take forever.
Wait, fun story. I have a friend, you probably know this friend too, Derek, who he only found out last year that you could recycle paper. Because him and another person, or like some other people, were at Dunkin' Donuts, and they were at some coffee shop. I'm pretty sure it was Dunkin' Donuts though. And he throws a paper bag or paper something into the trash can. And his other friends were joking around like, "Why the heck would you do that instead of putting it in the recycling bin?" But then the guy who threw it in the wrong place was so confused
Oh my gosh.
because he didn't realize this person,
Is this person currently a senior?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
We could even just, I know it's not good to use Green Team as a punishment,
Yeah, I
as
know.
it was in the middle school, but we could even just replace
Yeah.
like an in-class, like, I've never even
Yeah.
heard of someone having a
Yeah,
suspension
yeah.
for the
We
day
did,
in
we
class.
did a waste audit for environmental science, and it was just like shocking how grossed out people were. Like, you were wearing gloves, you can touch the trash. People were eating this like 15 minutes ago. Yeah, now it's in the trash can. Wow. And yeah, some of it is gross. Like when the milk drips out of your trash bag, that's gross. But you've just gotta get over it. If you can't,
Sorry, continue.
you can do it right the first time. You can recycle the thing, and then it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, even when I did Connect and Commit had like a trash audit one day, which was also like super fun because like a bunch of my friends also did it. So like we were in groups and we were just going around town picking up trash.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Just you have the gloves and the
Yeah,
bag.
yeah.
Just put it in the bag and you're good to go.
Yeah, so the trash audit was actually taking trash that was in the trash can and in the recycling bin and spreading it all out and counting it, which that was gross. But I don't know. Again, I was surprised by the people who like pride themselves, I suppose, on being strong. I'm not going to name names because that would be mean, but
Yes.
you just get it together, be tough, touch the thing. Don't just let one student who happens to be perhaps a little overly interested in environmentalism take all the trash. I don't know. It's just...
I have to say, another thing I think affects how much people recycle is how convenient it is for them, because I remember in my old town, you had trash day on Wednesday, and they would come by, and they would pick up your trash, and you had a recycling bin, and they would pick up your recycling, and my family used to recycle. But since moving to Winchester, where there's the dump, we just don't do it anymore, because my mom's like, I'm not going to go through the extra effort that it takes to, like, do, because I think they have fancy rules about, like, dumping your recycling at the dump and stuff, and it's different than just having another bin and putting it out on the sidewalk on Wednesday. And even though, you should do it anyway,
Okay.
I think that for some people, having to actually put effort into caring about the environment.
Yeah, I actually also think that I remember seeing something on Facebook where I think like in other countries, I think it was like Germany, where like you get fined if you don't recycle, and they'll have like routine like checks and stuff. But
Yeah, so actually in Winchester, we have a pilot program called SMART, Save Money and Reduce Trash, which is going to be a different pricing that could possibly be instituted for garbage. And instead of paying a flat rate to deposit your stuff on the conveyor belt that goes to the incinerator, you would pay per bag. You would pay a smaller yearly rate and then pay per bag, like $1 per trash bag that you fill, but like unlimited for recycling.
How does that save money?
Because if you use less trash, you'll end up lower than you would have if you just paid the flat rate before. And it does incentivize people in the pilot program that I understand. It does incentivize people to recycle more, and compost more and feed more of your trash to your chickens. That's more of a me thing, I get it, but the point stands. Also, with regards to the convenience, we have moved to a single stream recycling program, so what you would put in your recycling bin is just that you have to dump it in the single stream box. So if you're driving down to the transfer station, you drive past the little entrance area where the guy looks at your sticker and is like, oh yeah, you belong here, go on. You would stop first at this long thing that it used to say Casella, now it probably says JRM, and you would dump in your recyclables, and it's single stream, so you can put your paper with your plastic, with your metal, with your glass. Now the only thing is you can't recycle milk and juice cartons anymore, which is sad, but we'll get over it and we'll find out a way to do that. And then you can continue driving to the conveyor belt where you put your trash. And then there's also an area for sticks and an area for white goods and an area for swap shop stuff, but it's not as hard as it seems.
If I guess to go off like the same question Derek asked a little while earlier about like if we started doing like good practices, like what would happen? Like if we like continued along this trend of just sort of just like I guess being lazy and like inconsiderate, how would you see it, I guess it affecting sort of like the marine life? I guess at least in Winchester in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Winchester, I think we're actually on an uptick. It's not, I think, as fast as it needs to be on a global scale, but in Winchester, at least, I think if we didn't change anything and just kept, I don't know, if we didn't change anything from where we are now, I can see things getting a lot more polluted and a lot worse. But if we did continue this trend of positive growth, things could get a lot better. And if we got better, like a lot better, it could be really good. And Winchester is a small community, but we have a watershed, and the fact is litter and trash in our watershed make a difference downstream, literally downstream. And again, the more we can recycle, that leads to less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because we burn our garbage in Winchester. Yeah, so our stuff, it doesn't go to landfill. The ash does eventually, but like, see Mr. Marchand for details. Yeah. Globally, I think if we stayed here right now, we'd be screwed very fast if we're not already completely screwed. And I think, however, with the Paris Accords, the signing of the Paris Accords, that gives me a lot of hope that, like, because our environment, it can't just be seen as the ocean and the land. It's one thing because they're so interrelated. But I do think that the Paris Accords are going to help. But we really gotta, like, somehow figure out a way to get carbon out of the atmosphere.
And could you explain what those accords are?
It was in Paris. A bunch of international leaders, including President Obama and leaders from China and India and all over the world, came and met and talked about climate issues and environmental issues. And they put together, I'm not sure of the exact specifics, but they put together like a list of things that countries that sign this will swear to do in the future, and different countries signed it. Fun fact, the U.S. hasn't signed it yet because of our Congress, but places like China have signed it, and that's great, and hopefully it's a really holistic look at it. It's a good thing.
What do you think about like the sort of stigma, I guess, as we were talking about, like you guys were talking about like sort of the green team and like how that's sort of treated as a joke. Even like environmental club, I will say wasn't necessarily taken as like the most serious thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that stigma against sort of like marine science, or I guess maybe environmental science like in general?
Mm-hmm. I mean, once you get into the scientific field, I don't see as much stigma because it's science, and if you have data, like, I don't know, you walk into Bigelow Laboratory, you know it's for real. I think in terms of, like, around lay people, like, around us, you've always got that hippie stigma. Like, you're always going to think, oh yeah, environmentalist, hippie. And then my mom, who works in this, and she has a lot of friends who work in this area, like, they are always very careful to dress very professionally because they want to be taken seriously. So, yeah, it's about being taken seriously. In our school, I think part of the green team thing might have been, like, my fault and other people who weren't, like, socially elite. And, like, you know, it's middle school. People are going to pick on you. And if you spend your Mondays, afternoons in dumpster, that's not exactly going to help. But, I mean, I really value the experience I got from that club, and I wouldn't have done it any differently. And it's hard sometimes to recognize that I can't just talk to people and make them change their minds. Especially because I went up with a microphone in the cafeteria and was like, recycle or else. I made a PowerPoint for use in whatever our homeroom business was. At some point, people don't care because of who's saying it. So I don't know. I think we need new people to say it. I think it needs to be taken seriously. It can't just be cute. It's a matter of life and death. Like, maybe not that one recyclable, but it is going to add up.
What's your opinion on, I mean, very recently people have been saying that we have passed the carbon threshold is...
For the sake of not becoming incredibly depressed, I choose to believe that perhaps we can find some technology to reverse that, but it's true. We've really screwed up badly. It's not looking good. The problem is it's a delayed reaction thing. So we didn't know in the Industrial Revolution, we didn't know in the 20th century what was going to happen, and now we're feeling it. I was like, oops. But yeah, we definitely do need to focus on, honestly, eliminating carbon. We need to put survival of the planet over profits. Like, yeah, maybe oil makes sense, maybe coal makes sense, but there's a reason people are trying to kill coal. Like, it's not because we don't like you, West Virginians. Like, I worked on service trips in West Virginia, and it's true. When coal left, people's life got so much harder. They subsidized the water, providing so many things, and now you've got huge economic impacts with, like, crystal meth being huge, and families unable to get safe water, housing situations being very difficult, employment being hard to find. So we've got to take care of these people, because a lot of times when we just say, that's it, no more, we're picking on the people who have the most to lose and who are on the edges of society in terms of economics, like on the tipping point. So I think that we do need to go carbon cold turkey, but we need to do it. It's such a complex issue. And I do hope that we can find a way to reverse the pH trends in the ocean, reverse the carbon concentration in our atmosphere, whether it be by biomechanics, bioengineering, whatever it may be. But definitely the first step is going to be carbon sequestration, which is taking carbon from the atmosphere and isolating it in organic solid forms. So, example, like when a tree grows, it takes carbon from the atmosphere to build its cells. So that's sequestering carbon. So that's a good way to do it.
And I was also wondering, when you said oil, I kind of also thought about like some of the recent like environmental disasters, like the oil spill, like I think it was 2000.
BP, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2011 or something. I would also, but just in general, like that or maybe another thing. So like the media, how like the media sort of portrays like these sort of environmental like awareness and like these disasters. I mean, even recently, I think like early September, there was that Deepwater Horizon, which was like Mark Wahlberg movie about the BP oil spill. So I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on like how like the media in general portrays sort of environmental issues and maybe in relation or environmental disasters, and if we could do better, if they could do better in sort of raising awareness instead of making sort of a tabloid out of it.
Yeah. I think the catastrophe that's put forth by media causes a lot of people to lose hope. I mean, I'm glad that they're not sugarcoating it, obviously. But like having people giving people takeaway messages of what they can do is very important so that it can add up. For instance, like a copepod is a microscopic crustacean in the ocean, and they eat phytoplankton, and they're tiny. And they eat phytoplankton and they poo, and their poo sinks. And there are billions and trillions of these copepods in our ocean, to the point where we can measure their fecal pellet drops in tons, and that can be a significant source of carbon sequestration from the atmosphere, to the point where there are special labs that have special optics to simply study the descent of copepod poo, because that little thing can add up, and it's important that people know that little things they do can add up, like not throwing a cup in the Abidjona, that can add up. Otherwise, in media, I think it's important to also focus on fish. I want to stop seeing Jaws movies because sharks are incredibly endangered, and they're not aggressive unless you're a seal. And like honestly, with a lot of shark attacks, it's because the human looked like a seal. They were wearing a wetsuit. They were doing something dumb. Like, get over it. Yeah, that's scary because they could eat you, but like, they're probably not going to. And if you're putting yourself in a position where you could get eaten, like, natural selection, bye. Like, sharks deserve our protection as well. They're very interesting. They're incredibly important for top-down control of ecosystems. Yeah.
I guess actually even this summer there was
yeah,
there was the movie called The Shallows. The Shallows.
That just seems like such a bad movie. I haven't seen it, but it just seems bad.
I didn't see it either, but it was basically just like a popcorn, like just a shark attack.
A shark would never be that dedicated to go after one prey item, especially to someone living like on a rock. If you escape once, they're gonna go look for someone easier. And the shallows, come on, a great white is never gonna go in the shallows. They live at depth. They're fish. They don't want to be near the surface.
Aren't you more likely to get struck by lightning than killed by a shark? And I mean, people talk about, like you said, being afraid of getting eaten. I would be more afraid of getting hurt by a dog because
there
be
are more dogs.
More aggressive.
Like, be more afraid of cows. They'll kick you and step on your toes and lick you, and it'll be weird. Yeah. Like, honestly, I've never had a problem with a shark, and I swim a lot, and I've been in the ocean. I've been in a turnabout, which is like a 9-foot boat, in the middle of the Sheepsgate River while there were great white shark sightings, and my younger cousin was cowering in the bow because, oh my gosh, what if a great white shark comes and eats us? We didn't see it. The shark, like, these animals have instincts. They're programmed to do things. They're programmed to know what to hunt, and they want to hunt not a human, but like a seal or a fish, and unless you look like a seal or a fish, they're not going to come after you. But yeah, I think the media portrayal of sharks is aggravating. I do like the media portrayal of whales and all that, and that's great, but I think we need to extend that positive portrayal to all sorts of different marine life. Like, everyone loves about coral ecosystems, and I want to spread that to like kelp forests and everything, but corals definitely do need a lot of our attention. Corals not looking good for them.
Can you explain more about why corals are so important and what we're doing that's killing them off, basically?
Okay, so coral ecosystems are incredibly diverse. Like it's ridiculous how diverse they are. Like, the rocks are alive, and there's so many different species. And this can be a source for all sorts of ecosystem services, and like drug research, like research into cancer treating drugs. Just simply a variety of things that survive there, and taking out, like, there can also be nurseries for certain species that go out to be elsewhere. You can never tell what are the services an ecosystem provides until it stops providing them. But what we're doing to them, medication that ends up in the ocean, so like unpurified waste, because if your body doesn't use your medication, it's going to pee it out. Again, with nitrogen poisoning, and like human and animal feces ending up in the ocean, are giving them all sorts of new lovely diseases that are really harming coral polyps. And so the way corals work is they have an endosymbiont, a small algae that lives within each coral polyp. And a coral polyp is a tiny thing that looks like a sea anemone, and it's in the same family as a sea anemone. And your large coral rocks are hundreds of those organisms that calcify to make the hard thing that you know of as coral. And so the endosymbiont, that relationship is incredibly tenuous, and it's okay, it's perfect with the way the ocean is now. So like new viruses and new bacterium brought in by waste. You've also got nutrient imbalance from runoff. You've got like overfishing is taking out important predators. Like sea turtles are in danger and they're part of the ecosystem. You get it. Ecosystems simply destroyed when things run into them because they're delicate. The increasing ocean acidification is making it much harder for those corals to calcify, which is essential for them to live, and also harder for the endosymbionts to survive in that relationship, which leads to coral bleaching. You've also got like nutrients and other stuff like silts coming in from rivers, making the water cloudier, making it harder for them to photosynthesize, harder to get nutrients, also leading to coral bleaching. You've got people looking for special shells to sell. Like there's cyanide fishing is a thing in parts of the world such as Indonesia, where like you got a lot lower income stuff going on and a lot less regulations. So like the Great Barrier Reef and the reefs of Sumatra, they're all over there, and it's in the ocean, so there's not a good way to enforce laws. So you've got dynamite fishing, and like honestly, you stick a dynamite in a coral reef, like yeah, that's gonna cause some problems. I could go on. It's really depressing.
What exactly is cyanide fishing?
It's exactly what it sounds like. Cyanide it does in different concentrations. If you put cyanide in the water around a fish or a shellfish, it will stun it. And then you can capture the fish that might otherwise go into a little hole to hide, and you can bring it back up to the surface and take it. And obviously, cyanide doesn't just influence the one fish. It's an aquatic biome. The cyanide spreads out and stuns or damages other organisms as well.
But it's such a small concentration that we can eat them without us?
Well, the fish that are being captured with cyanide poisoning are usually for ornamental use.
Okay.
And sometimes eating, but fish have a higher tolerance of cyanide than humans do, but like we're just gonna go with it because people aren't saying enough about it. So
I still can't believe people use fish as ornaments.
Fish in a fish tank. That's what I mean.
Oh, okay. I was like...
Ornamental.
Yeah, like an actual, like someone's like hanging up a fish on the wall.
I mean, people do that.
People do that too.
I know, and it's really weird to me.
Yeah, it is a bit odd. Like, when I was a kid, I would always wonder, like, with the deer heads poking out of the wall, what is the rest of the deer on the other side of the wall? It's not. They just have a deer head on their wall. Like, how creepy would it have to have, like, a human heads on your wall?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how fishing used to be for a lot of people, because early humans, like, were a lot of time near the ocean, and it was such a huge way for you to feed yourself. It used to be a fine thing because people would, just use, like, fishing poles or hooks or small nets and get enough to provide for them or, like, their village or whatever. But as things have become more and more industrialized, not only are the machines and factories we're using affecting the ocean, but we're taking amounts of fish out of the ocean all at once that never would have happened before.
Yeah, and we don't need all of that. A lot of it is used for fish meal, fish oil, and people use that to feed a lot of the meat that we use. So, like, a lot of it doesn't end up being used in the way that we think it should be. And then there are alternatives to fish oil. For example, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't take fish oil because it's eating fish. I take algae oil, and it's more expensive, but sometimes it's on sale at Whole Foods, which is great. So, like, getting things like that to be more intelligent. Like, you can culture algae like you can culture E. coli. It's super easy.
Was there anything, like, unexpected you kind of got out of sort of pursuing, like, marine science that you didn't think you would, like, find out?
Definitely the community is great. And, like, weird things under rocks, like really weird stuff. So I went to this semester school, and I made, like, some friends that I'll have with me for the rest of my life, and it's awesome. Like, 15 basically sisters. We lived in one room together, and it was great. So definitely the community around that. And when I went to Bigelow's like a super legit lab. Like, really high up there, and they were willing to take a high school student to sort of like analyze computer data simply because there's not enough people to analyze all their computer data. And from there, I was able to progress to doing work in a lab, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So definitely being able to, there's so much like community and people be willing to like pay it forward and say like, you know what, I used to be an intern, I'll just give this person a hand. And like we talk about all sorts of cool stuff. Like turns out 3 different people in the lab, like in my one lab, so the laboratory has a lot of different rooms, and 3 different people in this one area had and raised chickens. So we come back like, oh my gosh, my chickens just had spaghetti last night and they loved it. Because like if you have leftover pasta, it looks like worms and they'll eat it. And other surprising things is just like I work with kids sometimes, teaching them to sail, just voluntarily, like as a volunteer thing. And they'll sometimes pick up seaweed that's floating in the water, and usually the volunteers are just like, ugh, put it back, seaweed is gross. But I can tell them the scientific name of the seaweed. I can tell them like where it lives and so much information about it. And it's like amazing to be able to foster curiosity. And like I had like a following of 1 or 2 kids that would like actually like me, which was really cool.
I know you talked about pursuing things related to marine biology as a career. What sort of career are you thinking of? Like a research one, or?
I don't really know. I think research would be really, really cool to do. I also really think that it's I mean, whose dream isn't it to like rescue turtles and fish and like help fix them, you know? Like that'd just be so cool. But yes, definitely research and that kind of thing. There's a lot to be done. I'd also love to somehow combine that with advocacy, political advocacy, because like there's a huge disconnect between knowledge and politics that shouldn't be there.
And so to sort of like close things off, is there anything sort of like you would want to say to like people listening of just like that, just to like sort of increase their awareness, like things you would suggest for them to do so that they become more aware or more considerate of like marine science?
Honestly, like open your eyes to it. Like be more conscious of your wastes and what you're putting into the environment, because if it feels like you're doing something bad, you're probably doing something bad. And also just Google ocean stuff, like even Google images like mantis shrimp or amazing creatures or jellyfish or worms or something. There's so much information on the internet that you can just look at pictures of fish all day and never become bored. Like, there's so much out there. So like open your eyes, open your browser, go look for it. It's out there and it's cool.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Kate, so much for coming here to talk to us today. So this has been another episode of The Passion Project. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, where we have all our other episodes up there right now. Also follow the WHS Tech Crew on Facebook at WHS Tech Crew, and you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat at WHS_Tech Crew. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.